Meeting for March 3rd, 2014 to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Kirk Crosskoff and remain standing for the invocation led by Pastor Rod Carell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we come to you and thank you for this time to come and do the business for the city, and thank you for our leaders. God, we first and foremost want to thank you for your blessings upon our city, upon our people. We ask, God, that you will continue to pour those out. Lord, for the businesses at hand tonight, God, we ask that you would give wisdom, guidance, and direction by your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Alley. Alley.
Here.
Goff.
Here.
Greer.
Yes.
Justin.
Here.
Crosskoff.
Here.
Lee.
Yes.
Goritz.
Here.
All present. Next item is reading and correcting of the journal.
Move we suspend the rules and dispense with the reading and correcting of the journal. Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilman Alley, to suspend the rules and reading and correcting of the journal. Any question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications.
Phyllis, what you got for us tonight?
Got a report on our Civic Center. 58 people used the center. They only had 3 events, and they were able to return $41.45 to the city.
Nobody wanted to get out in February,
I
did you?
guess that was it.
Did you want to get out in February?
Well, I have, yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Mr. C, please.
This is the building and monthly report. We had 2% of commercial permits. We had 29% of our times complaints. Consults and meetings were 53%. Residential permits were 15%. Commercial electric permits were 1. Commercial new rehabilitation permits was 1. Building complaints, we had 2. Complaints and code enforcement issues were 23. Consults and meetings building, 38. Consults and meetings and code enforcement was a total of 4. Meetings regarding zoning was 4. Residential demolition permit, we had 3. Residential electrical permit, we had 1. And residential new rehabilitation permit. Do I start over?
Yeah.
Residential new rehabilitation permit, a total of 9.
Oh, you were talking. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. C.
Thank you, sir.
Make sure those are included in the monthly minutes.
Mr. Chairman, just a few things here before we go on to unfinished business. Just to keep you informed, we are on daily pothole patrol here in the city. Not as bad as what we've had in past because of the road maintenance program that we have established. Now, there's still potholes. I'm not saying there aren't any potholes, but we're doing better this year than we've had in the past. We know what streets we're going to have to be doing some work on in the next year due to some of the potholes we've seen. So that's given us a good indication where we need to go next. Snow removal, as you can see, we dodged a bullet yesterday, what was supposed to be our way. We didn't get near that much, but our guys, once again, did a nice job in getting everything cleaned up. And hopefully we're on the downhill side of winter storms, and we will come through the year with salt left in our barn and overtime left in our budget. So I think all in all, we've done a great job. When I say we, I'm talking about the street department. It's not me. Bill McQueen and his guys, they're responsible for that. So all kudos goes to the guys that drive the trucks and Bill McQueen for overseeing that operation. So our hats are off to him and what he's accomplished, him and his crew. So also, we've talked in the past about the Complete Streets program. I think you've seen that Peru, Indiana was recognized as the second best Complete Streets program in the nation. And so we were very grateful for that recognition. We are getting calls from other communities asking how we have done that. And we are going to have an example of that. We have a a Complete Streets project we're getting pricing on right now, and we'll keep you informed on that. If anyone would like to look at the Complete Streets project that we are identifying at this point, you can come up, and we have a working model that we say now. It'll be a more finished product once we get done doing some of the work on it. But anyone who'd like to see that as we're working on it, feel free to come up, and we'll keep you informed on what the progress of that. Once we get the numbers in, we'll be able to, say whether we can continue to move forward on it or not. But right now, everything's looking pretty good on it.
Can you tell us which streets are?
It's Logan Street.
Logan Street? No?
Yeah, we're even getting calls from the ambulance drivers now that street did take a beating, and Mr. Guston, that's up in your area, you know the condition of the street. But ambulance drivers are dodging potholes all the time trying to get to the hospital, and I don't think anybody will be laying on a gurney in pain and have to hit a major pothole. So we are looking at that one to be identified, and it is, just from Broadway to to Grant Street, so it's a nice street to be able to do that. And we're working with the cemetery folks to put a sidewalk down along that side, so you do have sidewalks for the kids to walk on both sides. And we're also looking at a bike lane being included in that.
Good.
So that's part of the Complete Streets program. So that kind of brings you up to date where we're at and how we survived the winter so far. And so as the thawing continues and we don't have any continued freezing, we'll see if any more streets start to deteriorate on that. But right now, if any of you have any streets in your districts that you think we need to look at, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and let us know, and we'll go out and take a look.
Pothole right in front of your house.
Okay? Any questions?
Yeah, the street fell in. I've just noticed, and you were talking about that, I noticed how the first section of West Main Street that we did really got beat up this winter. There's a lot of where the paving meets each other.
Yeah, that's the place, and we've been talking with E&B about that. I mean, now, we have to think about that street's 10 years old.
Right.
But it's only coming apart at the seams, and so we're looking at a new way of doing that when we do paving projects in the future. There is, when they pave the first side of a road, okay, of course, that pavement's going to cool off. When they lay it down, it's like 275 degrees. Cools off, and you try to pave up to it. Sometimes it's not a real good bond there. So there's an emulsion you put down before you lay the second layer, and it helps it to bond to one another so that the seams don't pass the water down. That's what happened. The seams start to get water in, and they start to move apart. So we are going to be able to fix those places where the seams are coming apart and get them back in shape. So, but the rest of the street, for being 10 years old, it's still in pretty good shape and can go a few more years before we have to do anything major on that. But we are going to look at a different process on how we bond the two sides, because I'm not real happy with seams pulling apart. But even though it has been 10 years, we got to look at how can we do that better so we can, just one thing we can eliminate in the future. So that's what we've come up with.
Good. Okay.
So, anything else? Okay, go into unfinished business. Don't have anything listed here. Does anyone have anything unfinished they'd like to? Okay, we'll move into new business. First one is ordinance number 8, 2014.
An ordinance backflow and cross connections and related operations of the public water systems owned by and operated by the city of Prue, Indiana.
I move to consider ordinance number 8, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Croscoe, second by Councilwoman Lee, to consider ordinance number 8, 2014. Roll call.
Alley?
Yes.
Goff?
Yes.
Greer?
Yes.
Guston?
Yes.
Crosskoff?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Torrance?
Yes.
I move we adopt ordinance number 8, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Croscoe, second by Councilwoman Lee, to adopt ordinance number 8, 2014. Questions? Mr. Merriman?
Ordinance designed to prevent cross connections to the domestic water system on private property and to prevent water coming from another source back into the domestic water system. And it applies to both here in Peru and the Grissom Aeroplex system. Recently, our water system was inspected by the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, and basically, we passed with flying colors, with the exception of, they noted that we did not have an ordinance on the books that formally adopted this cross-connection and backflow prevention. And so we're simply trying to comply with the directives from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And what we did is we looked at several other communities that had similar ordinances in effect. And this one happens to be almost identical to the city of Lafayette. We reviewed all the ones we got back, and this one seemed to be the most comprehensive. And so we would respectfully request that the council approve, adopt this ordinance.
There aren't any issues at the present time that
No.
they found. It just
No, that was just
Okay.
one of the things on their checklist that they looked at. Does the city have a backflow and cross-connection prevention ordinance? We did not. We have been, with all new meter sets that we put in, we have been installing the backflow prevention equipment. So it's not as if we haven't been doing this. We have. We simply don't have the ordinance to back us up.
How expensive is that?
Well, with respect to residential customers,
Yeah.
that's included with the tap fee, and right now it's like $250 or something on that order. So when a new residential customer signs up for water service and we have to set a meter, make a tap to the main, this backflow prevention device is included in that price.
okay.
Any further questions? Any questions from members of the audience?
I had a question. And here it was saying that it was, the cost mention was to be built to, it's the responsibility of the homeowner? Is that right?
Yeah, it's the responsibility of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, with residential customers, the new meter set, the backflow preventer is part of the meter set. So that's, as I said, that's included with the tap fee for residential customers. Any other customers, I believe 1 inch or larger, the tap fee is based on time and materials. And so in those cases, the backflow preventer may require something more sophisticated than the reduced pressure unit that we would put on a residential service. In any case, the customer is responsible for paying for that. The customer is also responsible for having those backflow prevention devices tested on an annual basis and reporting that back to the utility.
And this is the backflow prevention assembly that's connected to the meter base in the
pit.
In the pit?
For residential customers, right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all part of the assembly that you get the meter, the yoke, and the connections, and the new ones now come with the backflow preventer on it.
Is there any situation where a resident would have to purchase one that doesn't have one already?
No.
Like with this, is there any situation where their system, they have to buy one now?
Unless, for some reason or another, we would determine that the situation exists that is an immediate danger to the system, then we would require the customer to put that on. We're not requiring customers, residential customers, to retrofit their meter set at this time. What we're doing is, as we go through and replace meter sets on a periodic basis, any new meter set gets the backflow preventer.
Okay.
So,
What about your commercial customers?
pardon me?
What about commercial?
If we determine, this ordinance allows us to go on the property and inspect the customer's water system to see if there might be a cross-connection between a water source that they have on site, like a well or something like that, and our water system. It allows us to do that. And in the event that we discover a situation like that, then we can mandate that the customer put on a backflow preventer.
And another question. I know that automatic sprinkler systems, backflow preventers on them, is there a situation where somebody could have a automatic sprinkler system now, and then this would this would cause them to have to buy a backflow prevention?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly. Usually, a fire protection system, like an automatic sprinkler, usually requires a separate source or a separate tap on our line. Usually, I say, but I'm sure there's a lot of systems in use today that use the domestic line that comes in, and they just tap off of that and feed the automatic sprinkler system. It's not supposed to be that way, but then again, a lot of things happen that aren't supposed to be. But yeah, if we would find a situation where that was the case, we would probably require them to put on a backflow preventer. This is all designed to prevent, as the title says, water from another source or water that has come from our system and gone into the customer's building and somehow gets contaminated through a process. It's to prevent that from coming back into our system and contaminating the rest of our system.
You said there's an annual inspection, and that's the responsibility of the customer? Is that an expensive endeavor, or?
I really honestly don't know what, I don't know what the inspectors charge at this point, and they have to be certified by the state of Indiana to do the inspection. Honestly, I don't know what that fee is.
I know with the schools, that was done on an annual basis, but I was concerned about a private homeowner, and if they have a backflow, and are they getting them inspected? Who checks on that?
They're supposed to submit a report to the utility on an annual basis. That's what
Not the residential customer, just commercial.
Just commercial.
Yeah, no residential people have to have an annual inspection, right? No, residential customers do not need an annual inspection, correct? Because they're not,
I believe that's correct.
okay.
Well, I thought you said they did.
Well,
That's what, yeah,
I'm trying to remember exactly what the ordinance said.
If you want to know, the city does, we have to do, KB Backflow comes in and tests ours, and we just received an invoice from them. If it makes a difference, I can run up and get it and tell you what that costs.
Well,
Okay.
let's see.
Inspection on,
Well,
I don't read a difference between commercial and
Humidity test.
residential. Yeah.
Says duty to test and repair. It shall be the duty of any customer user at any premises where backflow prevention assemblies are installed to have certified inspections and operational tests made upon installation and at least once per year. The inspections and tests shall be at the expense of the water user and shall be performed by a certified tester registered and approved by the state of Indiana and Peru Utilities. It shall be the duty of the customer to see that these tests are made in a timely manner.
so are we going to require all of the residential customers that,
That's what the ordinance says.
How are you going to get that done?
Right.
It's up to the customer.
And this is going to be from here on?
No,
That's,
yeah,
so that means, yeah. So
Yeah.
eventually, each home would have to do that, right?
yep.
So it'd be interesting to see if there isn't how much it would cost, down the road, I would think.
So everybody's going to be lifting those meter lids? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you have to be
No.
certified to be able to
The
test it.
certified,
It'd have to be
the
a
certified
contractor.
tester.
That contractor.
Certified tester would.
But their customer's responsible for having that done.
Where do we find one of them?
KB Blackflow, they're out of Kokomo.
But as I said, all of the existing, most of the most of the customers on the system don't have these devices, and the only time the device on a residential customer would be required would be if it's a new installation, so a new customer, or the utility as part of replacing a bad meter set, we would install one with the backflow preventer.
Then they got to make an annual report to you?
Pardon me?
Didn't they have to make an annual report?
Yeah.
That's asking a lot of your customer, isn't it?
Pardon me?
That's asking a lot of your customer, isn't it?
Well, I understand that, but unfortunately, this isn't something we have an option of not doing. Unless, of course, we want to get bad reports by them every year that we don't, that we don't require these devices to be inspected.
But according to your recent audit, we were okay. Everything was okay. We're doing what this ordinance is telling us to do already.
No, they came in and inspected the entire water system, which included the filtration plant, the booster stations, our record keeping for repairs and things like that. The one thing they said is you don't have this ordinance in place. So the inspection was a system-wide inspection, not just on whether we were putting in the backflow preventers.
How often do the residential water meters need replaced?
Well, we replace the water meters about every 10 years or so.
So it'd be fair to say in about 10 years, most of the customers will be phased into
Probably,
doing this.
yeah, one of the things we're being faced with is the copper and lead rule, copper and lead regulation. And we've determined that a fairly large part of our meters out in the field won't meet the new copper and lead regulations, and we're going to be required to replace those. So when that happens, chances are they will get a backflow preventer.
Then they got to report to you every year.
That's what the ordinance
That's a
says.
real expectation of the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would
Cost
that be
one.
like on an annual basis, like will we be notified, or is it just as the customer wants to do it,
Yeah.
the inspection?
As the customer, I guess the customer would have to keep track of when they were required to
And
make
if they don't?
to make the report.
Do it?
Says it can discontinue water
Technically, it
services.
says you can discontinue, but we
And fine them
don't.
$1,000.
Yeah, fine up to
But
1,000.
but we don't, but we don't do that, okay? We have a similar reporting requirement on the wastewater side for customers that are required to have grease traps, primarily commercial establishments, restaurants and things like that. And there's an annual inspection and reporting requirement. Annually, they're supposed to have those inspected and send us a report. We send out a notice, and invariably, there are some that don't, either through they forget or they simply say, I'm not going to do it. We've had some of those. And there's provisions in the ordinance where we can fine people and do all that, and that's only as a very last resort. So, I mean, the object here is not to punish the customer. The object here is to protect the water system. We're going to be required to do this. Would we shut a customer off because they didn't do the annual report? No. Would we notify the customer that the annual report is due? Yes. Would we go visit them? Yes. And only in extreme situations would we then use the enforcement provision of the ordinance. I mean, we're not here to do that. We're just here to make sure that the system is protected.
Actually, this fine says a separate offense shall be deemed committed on each day that a violation occurs or continues. So it could be up to $1,000 a day for perpetuity.
Yeah.
I think the limit's 2,500 under the Indiana law.
Okay.
And as I
That's
say,
a lot of
as I said, we currently have similar provisions in the wastewater ordinance. And only in extreme situations where a customer has been notified on numerous occasions and still refuses to comply do we ever threaten to use the fine.
I'm the one that writes that letter. We've usually got one or two of those people a year. Actually, it's probably two, the same person every year. And ultimately, they give us the report once we've threatened to sue them.
Yeah.
I don't know why it takes that, but it does.
Sometimes
for
it
just
does.
one particular person.
But we'd be expanding this to every resident.
Pardon?
But we'd be expanding those requirements to every resident eventually.
Eventually.
I think eventually, yeah. 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 And I've not discussed it with the folks at the Division of Water Management, but I suspect as more of these devices get out in the field, it would be a relatively easy thing to do, to put something in the bill, you know, that reminds people they need to do this. But I don't know, I don't know how we get around not having these things inspected on a periodic basis. I don't know how we do that.
I am concerned about how much it would cost to get them inspected every year. And I worked at a company for a while that dealt with water systems, and we routinely checked backflow systems. A company of, I think, 15 people. There was only 2 that were certified because it was a difficult process. So I am concerned. I don't know how much they charged to have them checked, but that does concern me.
We do have some residential backflows out there right now.
Maybe 25%. Because we've been, as I said, as we've been renewing services over the years, we tried to get ahead of this by putting the backflow preventers in.
How many inspection reports have you received?
How many residential meters do you have altogether?
About 5,000.
So if it takes an hour to do each one, it's going to take 2.5 people a whole year to do them. 5,000 hours. It's a lot of inspecting.
Was I right in you saying that Lafayette was using this?
This is basically Lafayette's ordinance.
Do you,
Have you addressed this with them or talked to?
No.
You haven't?
No.
So you have no idea how it's going there?
do you know how, like Logansport, Wabash, those communities are handling this?
No.
Further questions?
Does the law that you're citing in here have that requirement, the residential backflow with the responsibility being upon the customer?
I believe it does. I'm not totally sure, but I believe it's in the Indiana Administrative Code, the 327 IAC 8-10.
Well, the customer's going to have to pay for it one way or the other, whether the utilities does it and charges the customer for it in the fee, or whether they get billed by the backflow testing people. It's going to fall to the customer no matter what.
Are you going to have a certified person on staff?
We've got
Figured you
one.
did. I'm just asking that
Yeah,
question.
we've got one on staff.
Have you looked at other cities to, other than Lafayette, to see how they're addressing the issue?
Yeah, we got Fort Wayne's, we got South Bend's, I believe we got Evansville, we got Carmel, Jasper, and Huntingburg, I believe. And some of them were weren't very comprehensive. They just provided kind of an outline, and basically, as long as basically they referenced this Indiana Administrative Code citation, so you had to go back to that to see what the Indiana Code said. Of all of those, I thought Lafayette and Carmel's were probably the most comprehensive, because they pretty well laid out exactly what the duties and responsibilities of all the parties were. Didn't leave a whole lot to interpretation, I guess, which I always prefer to have more guidance than less when we do these kind of things.
I think the most important thing you've said is this is going to protect our water supply. That makes it real simple.
That's the whole object behind this, is to protect the domestic water supply. And does it add some burden to the customer? Yes, it does. But having said that, all it would take would be one individual who maybe had rather nefarious motives to pollute the domestic water supply, and you'd never know it until it was too late.
And we've asked a lot of people lately, and I don't think there's a situation where we completely close every gap to make everything as safe as possible, and there's a balance to be struck with the cost of the individual and the safety of the system.
What is that?
That's what we're here to decide.
Well, I'm the guy that's responsible for making sure that doesn't happen.
And I'm here to
Okay?
make sure
And
that
so,
the interests of the people are served to
well, the
best
interest of the
ability.
people are served by having a safe water system.
The bottom line is the backflow preventer is required by the state now.
It's a mandate.
It's mandated by the state. It's not an option.
Then why are we asking?
Well, I think it would be good to know an approximate cost for the average homeowner, before we get into it.
And that's a different part of the discussion, but the discussion about whether the backflow prevention or not is a good idea, we can't debate that
No,
because
I'm
the
not.
state has mandated that.
We know that.
We can debate whether or not the customer needs to pay for the inspection, but you can't debate whether or not you're going to have a backflow system because the state's required it.
But
Right, I
as
agree with that, but
as Chairman Crosskoff has stated too, either way, whether they pay for it or the utilities does it, there's going to be an increased cost. So somebody has to pay for the services they're receiving on that. And so it doesn't matter if they pay for it individually or they pay for it through an increased fee in their bill. It's a service, somebody has to pay for it. It's a mandate, and we know what mandates are like. We get them all the time. They're unfunded. They want to hand them down, but they don't want to provide any money to make sure it happens. So we're stuck
Would it
with
be cheaper to the customers since the utility company has certified people of the utilities, if there was a small increase in everyone's bill that helped pay for someone at utilities who was certified versus each individual in the free market asking somebody to come do it every year? Would that be better, more cost-effective for the customers?
Possibly.
Well, as I said, though, if you spend an hour on each one, he's going to have 2.5 people doing nothing but that
Right,
the whole year.
right. I'm just saying, either way, if that's going to happen, is it better for the customer that it's done collectively through the utilities or that each individual pays for it?
Or the utilities contracts with a particular company to do it for them, or that they would
Right.
suggest. I don't think there's that many. I don't know.
Right off the top of my head, I don't think we would have enough man-hours with the current staffing level that we've got to do that. Pretty,
Lean.
yeah. And so, I don't know that we would. I don't know whether it would be more cost-effective to hire an additional person and that's all they did, or whether it would be more cost-effective to bid that out and have an outside service do it. That may be more, with respect to the cost of the customer, it may be better if they were if they were our contractors, you know, we could say, well, we've got 5,000, 6,000 meters out there in the system that need to be tested, eventually need to be tested, or backflow preventers. Give us a price to do those as opposed to each customer having to get their own person. So get a bulk rate, I guess, for the lack of a better term.
Right.
Well, I think, you know, when you look at the price and the cost of this, as you said, there are some things, one drop could be very hazardous to this, so what price are we putting on human life?
Yeah, and you know, years ago, it didn't, well, it wasn't as high on the priority list of water utilities because, well, you didn't have,
The times have changed,
times have changed. That's
and there
right.
are a lot of people
Times
look,
have changed, and we're seeing, what we're beginning to see are some people that put in groundwater source heat pumps, and so they're drilling wells, and they're bringing another source of water into the building, and it's, well, originally it was just for the heating purposes, and well, since we've got the well, we'll just go ahead and, you know, supply some of our, you know, the faucet in the garage and that kind of thing, and we won't have to pay the utility for that. And the next thing you know, you get the two systems connected. So I'm more than willing to go and have a look at what we might be able to do to minimize the cost to at least the residential folks.
I would be in favor of that option, Roger.
Yeah, well, we can look at that and see what we might be able to do. I don't think we can escape the fact that we need to test these periodically.
No.
I don't think we can escape that.
Yeah.
We can certainly try to look to see how it would minimize the cost to the individual customer.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with that.
I would too,
Okay.
definitely.
but again, I think the education part of this is a mandate, and this is what society is sometimes, and even in small communities, we're trying to make sure that all human life is protected by doing this, and I think that's very important for everybody to remember. So.
I fully appreciate council's concern as far as the cost is concerned. I do. But on the other hand, as I said earlier, you know, we're responsible, the utility is responsible for making sure that, you know, when the customer uses the water from the tap, he's assured that it's a safe product. I mean, we have to, I don't know if you go on our website, but we have a water quality report every year that we have to do, and we're required to sample for any number of constituents in the water and certify that they're less than the threshold amounts that the EPA stipulates. And so, and now we're required to do the copper and lead testing, and as I said earlier, we're going to have to change out several of our meters because they're not going to meet that standard. And is that going to cost us some money? Yeah, it will. But
You just said something there, copper and lead testing. Okay, a lot of homes have copper piping. Is it not good now?
no, it's primarily the lead that they're concerned about.
Okay.
And a
You
lot
mentioned
of,
copper. That was my only.
that's
It's the joinery.
Yeah, solid.
the solder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the solder. A lot, well, in the past, some of the service lines and even some of the piping in the house was lead piping. And that's what they want to make sure that, you know, we don't go over the threshold of the lead in the water. So we're required to do periodic testing, samples at various locations in the system and submit that to IDEM.
Okay.
But no, I'd be happy to go back and sit down with our folks and maybe come up with some sort of a suggestion or a
We need a
plan
number.
where we could,
You need a value. How can we put that on the burden on the customer without knowing a value up front?
Well, because the state says you're going to.
Well, I don't care.
I've got the Indiana
We don't
code
do it
right
today.
here. It's 35, or 327, that code you cited, I mean, it's right there.
That's
It
fine.
says that it is the customer's responsibility to have the system maintained, and, I mean,
Yeah,
But that
That's not what
doesn't
we're,
answer the question.
yeah.
That doesn't answer the value question we're trying to put on top of our customer.
Right. Well, either way,
They may get it
If
sooner
you-
or
if-
later,
if
or they
you-
may get it just through their water bill.
yeah, if the utility staffs up to provide that service, that's going to be built into the rate.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you know, the customer contracts individually with somebody that's the certified tester, then they're going to be paying it directly out of their pocket to that person.
Well, yeah. And as Bill said, it's going to happen either way. It's just what's going to be the most beneficial to the customer, how we do it.
No, I mean, it's, either way, I mean, it's the customer's responsibility, period.
I understand that.
So-
We just need some idea what we're doing. We have no idea what.
I'm not saying you need to vote on it tonight, but ultimately, it's the customer's responsibility according to the code, so.
So I have no problem going back and getting with our folks to see what we might be able to do to minimize the cost, whether we can do it through maybe the person's a contractor to us. I don't know. We'll,
Okay. The table ordinance number 8, 2014, till a time such as Mr. Merriman can come back with some cost estimates on what the inspection fees will be.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilman Croscoff, second by Councilwoman Torrance to table ordinance number 8, 2014, until further information is gained. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have any further question on the motion?
How does this affect businesses and when?
it will affect businesses when the ordinance is passed.
Do you have an estimate on what each individual business?
That would be on an individual basis, because potentially, each business would have a different situation inside their building. So an inspection would have to be made. A proper device would then be recommended, and the customer would then have to put it on.
So residents have a set fee of, you said roughly $200 for their units, no matter whether they have lead, copper, or PEX piping, yet businesses are going to be prorated on an individual basis.
Currently, any water service over a residential 5/8 by 3/4, the tap fee is based on time and materials. So it's whatever is required for the utility to run the line from the water main into the building. And that can vary on the size that's required and any number of things. The residential is a flat fee. It's so many dollars. And it includes the meter set, the meter pit, the lid, and that kind of thing. And it will now include this backflow preventer.
Mr. Merriman, is there any difference when you're talking about business? 'Cause I think what Sarah's getting at, her business is going to have a combination. It could be a kitchen in there and things of that nature. Does that have any bearing on the cost and the type of business it is?
It just, if you read in the ordinance, it depends on exactly what is inside what
It's true.
piping you have inside the building. And that determines what kind, there's many different kinds of backflow preventers. So the situation in each particular building then dictates what kind of backflow preventer has to be installed. So the only way the utility knows that is if we come in and do an inspection.
You're right.
It may be a very simple backflow preventer. It may be one that's a bit more complex depending on what processes you have in the building. But we won't know that until they actually go and do the inspection.
Any other questions?
Is it that yearly inspection, does it have to be yearly, or can you do it like once every 3 or 5?
It says at least annually.
Yeah.
In the ordinance, at least annually.
It says annual. And it also
In the state
says,
ordinance?
pardon me?
Okay.
It also says in the ordinance that if it's determined that there might be some particular, it might be particularly hazardous, it might be a situation where the risk of backflow into the public land system is pretty significant, then the inspections and testing can happen more often than annually.
I just have a comment. I don't understand the tabling of this ordinance number 8 because
We're going to do it anyway.
I don't see that the ordinance is going to change. According to the state law, it's going to be the responsibility of the customer. I understand that Roger has said he would go back and investigate to see what the cost might be, but that's not going to, his investigation isn't going to change the ordinance.
No, it's not. There was just a number of comments made that they'd like to know approximately what the cost would be, and I thought a 1 month delay is not going to be that critical. That's my thought.
I would like to see if it comes back in the report that it would be better served to the public to have utilities either contracted out or hired on extra staff and have that nominally raise their monthly water bill. I would like that part of the expansion of per utilities included in the ordinance adopting the changes so that they're tied together. That's why I'd like to table it.
Further questions? Further questions from the audience? Roll call.
Alley,
Yes.
Goff,
No.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston,
No.
Crosskoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Torrance.
Yes.
Motion carries. It is tabled. You want to bring it back next month then, right?
If, my motion was that for a period of time to allow Mr. Merriman to come up with some cost estimates.
Do you think that's next month?
We're going to end up passing.
Okay, so
Okay.
just make sure it gets back on the agenda for
That's
next
fine.
month then. So-
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, the next item this evening is amended ordinance number 1, 2014.
An ordinance to repeal and replace section 70.24 of the city-approved Code of Ordinances.
Move we consider amended ordinance number 1, 2014.
Second?
Has been moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilman Greer, to consider amended ordinance number 1, 2014. Roll call.
Alley,
Yes.
Goff.
Yes.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston.
Yes.
Crosskoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Torrance.
Yes.
Move we adopt amended ordinance number 1, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilman Guston, to adopt amended ordinance number 1, 2014. Questions? This is pretty simple. If you look on page 2, the attachment A, at the bottom, 17, 18, 19, the ones with the asterisk beside them. If you recall, last month we did adopt the truck routes and identified these streets. And in doing so, we did have some conversation with other businesses that had talked about adding these sections of streets to the list because they have truck route coming in on short sections of those. And we felt that they did have good reason to ask for that correction. And we also checked the streets, and they are worthy to handle the weight restrictions on that. So we felt that it was a good request on their part to add those, and that is all this attachment does, was simply add 3 more streets to the identified streets considered truck routes, so we can get signage up and, marking these streets as such. Any questions? Questions from the audience? Roll call.
Alley.
Which streets?
We've got a list of them we can give you.
Pardon me?
Alley,
Yes.
Goff.
Yes.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston,
Yes.
Crosskoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Torrance.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item is ordinance number 9, 2014.
An ordinance to vacate a public alley in the city of Peru.
Move we consider ordinance number 9, 2014.
Second.
Okay, who is that seconded? Okay. Okay, it was moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilman Guston, to consider ordinance number 9, 2014. Roll call.
Alley,
Yes.
Goff.
Yes.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston,
Yes.
Crosskoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Torrance.
Yes.
Move we adopt ordinance number 9, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Crosscutt, second by Councilman Guston to adopt ordinance 19, 2014. Questions? Mr. C.
Did you bring pictures?
Yes, I did. Always.
It's over there by Shanny.
Thank you.
Over there by Shanny Malone's.
Yes, I'm not sure.
Thanks.
I've been trying to figure it out. Here we go. This would be.
No.
This is the alley that was behind what used to be the old Shanny Malone's. It's called,
Right here.
Smitty McMusselman's.
I'm terrible with names. We took this before the planning commission, and, well, actually, we sent out all the proper notifications, touched base with the utilities and the street department. There was no issues in closing or vacating the total alley. We sent out the notifications to all the property owners with the property that's adjacent to that alley, and we didn't receive anything back to, slow it down at all, so we went ahead to the planning commission, we voted it through. J.B. Ladd was in Florida, and he did not get the letter. The letter didn't get to him in a timely manner, so he called and would like to have the alley from Franklin Street to his car wash. He would prefer that we not vacate that because he has a lot of traffic that comes in there. But there's no issue regarding behind the pub to vacate that portion of the alley. And that's just where it stands right now. I think we have people here to talk about it, I'm not sure. That's it. You need me back home?
We will.
I am Jenna Deardorff, J.B. Ladd's daughter. Really, we built the car wash knowing that we have 3 access points. The alley was there when we did purchase it. We think that it would be a problem for our customers to get in and also for the dumpster to be picked up. There's no way for him to be able to get it through on the south side of the building. He does use the alley to pick it up.
Any questions for her?
So you're saying that you wouldn't want any of
We would
the-
prefer the alley not to be
Just
shut
stay
down at
open.
all. That's correct.
Okay, so even behind Shanty Malone's and,
Yes.
okay.
If you block that alley at the end, that dumpster guy's gonna have to back out of the alley.
Yes, and that would not be very easy for him at all.
That'd be very funny.
So we really do need to be able to at least get through it and use the alley for that. And there's nowhere else to put the dumpster. It would be impossible to put it in the front because there is the dog wash there. And at this point, we only have 2 parking spots for that in the first place.
You have access to the car wash there, to the south side?
Yes, right there on the on the side of it. That's
Yeah.
correct. I'm not sure how big the dumpster truck is though, so I'm not sure if it would be very difficult for him to be able to get through on that side of the car wash at that anyways.
Can't.
Could you come through that trailer court in some manner? Were they,
No, there's no access. It's grass right there, and we've never went to look for that anyways, I guess. But no, there's no access to get through
No
there.
public access, Phil, it's all private property.
Yeah. The alley's the only place that we have to be able to get through and then for it to come back out on the other side.
I guess I have a question for Dennis. What was the reason that we were looking to close the alley?
Behind the pub.
Okay.
There's parking back there now, isn't there? No?
Yeah.
So, more than there was a couple of weeks ago. There seems to be, they've moved the office for the trailer court, haven't they? A little bit to the west. It looked like there's more parking behind, no?
No, that,
It just looked like there was
correct me
more
if I'm wrong,
space there
sir,
than there was.
your parking goes back to the alley, then there's the alley, and then it goes into the trailer park. So you just have between your building and the alley is what
That is correct.
it doesn't get to the,
the other half of the alley would become the trailer park.
Right. Yeah, each property owner gets half of that alley. So if you close it, half would go to them, to Smitty McMusselman's, to Culligan, well, Broadway Liquors, which would be there as well. The other half all goes to the mobile home community there. So if she wanted to put a fence down through there, and nobody could drive down that alley, if the whole thing was eliminated.
But this ordinance calls for that entire alley all the way from West Franklin Street all the way to West Riverside Drive to be vacated.
Originally, yes.
That's what this says, yeah. But
That's what the planning commission approved.
That was passed by the planning commission, but Mr. Ladd didn't get his letter in time to get his input into it.
What would have been the planning commission's recommendation if Mr. Ladd had received his?
That passed planning commission.
Well, it would, I'm sure it would have added more information than what we were given, at the time.
So where does the hot dog stand? Is that?
It's on the other side of Franklin.
It's on the other side of the road.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not on the same alley.
No, the same alley.
Come up here to that.
Car wash,
you can
whatever-
get in,
whatever else
you can get in this one. Here, this is the car wash. You can get in here.
No, there's four buildings
You
there.
can get in here. And
Liquor store
this
and
is-
Culligan and,
there's
yeah, those
three
four.
ways to get in.
So she-
That's what I always
Our
thought.
number,
They put in there.
She's in 18, she's in 19. She's in 19.
Eliminate,
Yeah.
it only gives one way to get in.
18 is the one that's requesting that be closed. 19 is, or 21 is the liquor store, and 22 is Culligan.
It would be more better.
To have more.
No, we had never, we didn't plan on blocking any of that off. We were gonna leave that open, but if we needed some extra parking, then we'd have that extra parking just for, just to have it. And I don't even believe, I think that it probably wouldn't even be used until maybe the evening times when it got busy. So that's kind of what we were thinking. We weren't trying to hurt anybody's business. We don't want to block it. We just want to be able to use it at our leisure.
What I would be concerned about is if, not that the trailer park would do this, but you don't know who's gonna own that property forever. I buy the trailer park, I put my fence over to halfway through the alley, now you can't even use the alley at all.
Right.
So now you got no access to your parking, unless you go over the sidewalk.
You mean if the alley's vacated?
Yeah, because the other half goes
The
to
other half,
the trailer park.
the trailer park would own all the way down, if you eliminate the whole alley, by law, she can go, 1 inch in, and that lady who owns the mobile home committee can put a fence all the way down through there. I don't know that she would, I'm just saying, worst case
And
scenario,
I'm not saying
then,
she would, but
then nobody benefits.
who's gonna be the next owner,
It just, before you make that decision, you gotta think that somebody can, if they own that other property, they can make it tough on all those business owners down there. So, if the complete thing was.
Have there been any problems with people parking back there in the evening?
Well, we haven't opened yet, so we don't know if there will be a problem at all.
Didn't used to be.
We don't have any parking.
yeah.
That's what the majority of our prospective patrons are asking is, has this parking situation been fixed yet? So that would prospectively get us 2 to 4 more parking spots for the evening rush, which would be after normal trash pickup hours.
Unless they put a fence up, then they're not getting that at all, right? Mhm.
Even at that, it's a customer base. It's not only for trash. I mean, that is a point of where customers pull in. I mean, on both sides. So,
Ladies, gentlemen,
Any opinions?
I use that car wash.
do you?
Yeah, I always go in the stores, between your place and the stores, and come around behind. That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I do it.
Coming in from from River Road is not smart.
No, it's kind of difficult, yes. Well, even around the south side of the building is even, I mean, it's just really tight, so.
Now, sir, you did talk with the owner of the mobile home park about purchasing or renting some ground, correct?
Totally different issue, though.
Pardon?
That's a different issue.
Yeah, I mean, but she wasn't willing to sell at that point, is that right?
It's just not an option at this point.
No, okay.
If we vacate the alley, you'll have to get a smaller car.
No, thank you.
Just ride your bike in.
Anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to add?
I wouldn't be opposed to dropping the issue at this point on, I hadn't even considered, if the trailer park does own that they would possibly.
They could.
I mean, I'm in favor of dropping the issue entirely.
No, that's the only thing I worry about.
Yeah.
No, that's the only thing I worry about, Sarah. If she doesn't, she owns the land all the way down the other side, so that
forces-
5 feet.
That would then force you into a position where you'd have to potentially buy from her. It makes her position stronger.
It would also cut the room car wash.
Well, listen, you're not, unless you redo the whole sidewalk and put a new curb cut, you're not getting into the parking spots they have if you can't use the alley. So, if the neighbor owns half the alley, good luck.
They just shut off your entrance.
They shut off your access, and then you have to negotiate with them to buy whatever they want you to buy at whatever price.
And I don't see a problem with you guys parking there anyway, even if they don't vacate that. I think you're gonna be fine in the evenings.
What, can we just drop this?
We can just vote no.
Yeah, vote no.
No, you can't drop it, because what you have before you, if you say nothing, it's going to be that it's a closed alley, because that's what's before. The planning commission approved closing the alley, so you have to take an action. Right now, if you have this ordinance to vacate an alley.
Okay.
If you're going to, you have a motion to
Call the
adopt
question, Jackie.
ordinance number 9 right now, so what you'd have to do is to change that, and either that or just all vote no. If you want to kill it, you can vote no, and then it just doesn't pass.
Let's vote.
Okay.
Alley? Goff?
No.
Greer?
No.
Guston?
No.
Crosskoff?
No.
Lee?
No.
Torrance?
No?
Okay. So it didn't pass based on the no votes, because you didn't approve of it. So, okay. All right, the next ordinance is ordinance number 10, 2014.
An ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated cable TV fund to the cable TV fund budget, the sum of $30,000.
Move to consider ordinance number 10, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilwoman Lee, to consider ordinance number 10, 2014. Roll call.
Alley?
Yes.
Goff?
Yes.
Greer?
Yes.
Guston?
Yep.
Crosskoff?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Torrance?
Yes.
Okay, let me explain so everybody, when they leave here, is understanding of this. This money that is in there is from the cable TV funds. Mr. Guston is on the cable TV committee, as is Mr. Crosskoff. They have approved this funding. Now, just so we have, a good paper trail to say this how it's going through the appropriation, they decided to go ahead and put it in an ordinance format. It's considered tonight because it's an unappropriated. So it will come back and be adopted at the next meeting. But here's the way this is going to work. It's not that any check is going to be written to anybody, and this has been explained to the folks with the skate park as well. The city will pay claims up to the $30,000 out of the cable TV fund. So we've talked to Mr. Anderson and Gabe. I think you were in that meeting as well when we talked about they would be paying claims. Or that's how it'd be the last time you guys up. It's not a $30,000 check gets written to, Skate Park Incorporated. When claims come in, they are sent here and they are paid out of the cable TV funds. That's the same way we pay out of this fund for things that go at the high school, buying new equipment or this new speaker system and things that you see in this room or the microphones. The claims are paid out of that fund. It is not a check written. So this money stays there until Jackie receives a claim, and then checks will be made after everything is passed. So that's the way this worked. But the $30,000 has been approved by the Cable TV Committee. And they will pay claims out of that as Jackie receives. And when they do that, it's not immediate claims because they got, some Board of Works claims that go through. So it's not going to be just going to give me a check and the money's available tomorrow. That's how it'll work and go through the normal process after that. That's the way we've taken it from the cable fund, as we decided that's the way that has to work, because it is not a budget. You don't see a cable television fund budget in your budget thing. It comes from the fees that the Comcast pays on that. It's in this sum over here, but it's different from the other budgets. We're doing this to make sure there's a paper trail, but the claims have to be submitted and processed that way. Just so you understand how this works, in case anybody asks you how it works. It's a little different than some, because this is not a regular budgeted thing that we have here. Yes?
One time.
One time.
Remember, we
Yeah.
agreed this is a one-timer.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's in your minutes of your meeting, so.
And it's contingent on receiving the 30,000 from the two public parties first?
Well,
No,
no,
well.
here's, and I know there's been some question on that, and if you have Mr. Van Balen's letter that you have there with ordinance number 10,
Yep.
here's what it says, just so, it says, both Ken and I, this is from Dave Van Balen, and he's talking about Ken Licklider, Ken and I have agreed that if the city would put in a total of $30,000, we would assure that the project would get to its $60,000 goal. It doesn't say, who writes the first check or anything. This is their letter of commitment that says, yes, we will put up the money to get to the goal. So by this, I think they have reached it. It's not a matter of who writes the first check. They have committed that they would get it to that $60,000 goal. You agree?
Yep, that's what it says.
That's what that says, I agree.
Yeah. That's what it says. I mean, that's the letter that was signed. And so, does everybody understand, or did I confuse you worse? It's different. It's not a check is being written to an organization. It is, we will pay claims up to that amount, not above. So the claims have to be submitted. And it'll be, checks will be written as Jackie gets them in. Okay? All righty. Any questions from the audience? Roll call.
Ally,
Yes.
Goff,
Yes.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston,
Yes.
Crosskoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Torrance.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next one is ordinance number 11, 2014.
An ordinance of proposed sewage work rates and charges.
Move to consider ordinance number 11, 2014.
Second.
Has been moved by Councilman Crosskoff, second by Councilman Goff, to consider ordinance 11, 2014. Roll call.
Ally,
Yes.
Goff.
Yes.
Greer,
Yes.
Guston.
Yes.
Crosskoff.
Yep.
Lee. Torrance.
Yes.
And this will have to come back next month for its final vote. So, anybody have anything else to come before the council? Anybody in the
Roger.
audience have anything they'd like to bring up?
Do we have to have a public hearing next month on this ordinance? And so we should probably go ahead and set that public hearing on ordinance.
5:45?
So would it be sufficient for everyone if we were here at 5:45 at the April meeting to have the public hearing on ordinance number 11?
I think it'd be fine.
Will that be okay? Okay.
You're not going to be here, so what do you care?
I know, maybe not.
Okay.
What's that?
The next,
Anything else?
the April meeting,
Okay.
5:45.
5:40.
A motion to adjourn be in order.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're out.